Today is July 10th, 2019. My name is Jason Higgins. I'm a Ph.D. candidate in American History at the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Today I'm in Buffalo, New York at the Veterans One Stop, and joining me for an interview is Joani Higgins. This interview is part of the Incarcerated Veterans Oral History Project. Mrs. Higgins, I want to thank you for your willingness to share your story and participate in the project.
You're welcome.
Can I call you Joani?
Absolutely.
Great. And do I have your permission to record the interview?
Yes.
Great. So when and where were you born?
In Jamestown, New York.
And you never served in the military, correct?
I did not.
But your husband did?
My husband did for 19 years.
What was his name?
Chuck Higgins. Mm-hmm.
And which branch of the military did he serve?
In the Army.
In the Army. And National Guard?
He was active duty for 6 years and then National Guard for 13.
Did he deploy to a combat zone?
He was not in combat. He was in Bosnia, but it was combat time.
Peace mission?
In the peace mission, yeah.
Okay. And he served for 19 years?
Yes. Yep.
And did he remain in the Army for the rest of his life?
Yes. Yep.
And he died in the Army?
He did, on active duty 2 years ago.
And have you ever been diagnosed with PTSD?
I have not.
Mm-mm. If you needed it, do you have access to counseling services?
I do. My children and I have been in grief counseling since probably 5 weeks after he passed.
I just want to make sure because I don't want my interviews to
Yeah.
trauma in people's lives.
Yeah.
So if they have help if they need it.
Thank you.
Have you ever been incarcerated?
I have not.
And so I'll just put my questions aside now. And
Okay.
Can you tell me where you're from?
Sure. I grew up in Bemis Point, which is on Lake Chautauqua in the southern tier. So it's about an hour and a half west of here. In the country, come from a big military family. 10 uncles and my grandparents. That's how my grandparents met, was in a bomb shelter in England.
Wow.
And it kind of trickled down through. My nephews are in, all of my brother-in-laws. So apparently my sisters and I are sucker for the uniform or for punishment. They're all Army.
Well, all Army.
All my brother-in-laws, yep. Actually, my one brother-in-law just retired with his 20 years 2 weeks ago. And then my other brother-in-law served 24 years.
Did you ever consider joining?
I did not.
Okay. Any reason for that?
I don't know. Scared, I guess. I knew what I wanted to do college-wise, and it wasn't based around the military. I look back on it now and wish maybe I did go, and I think that everyone should serve. My dad did encourage me to go in the Air Force, but I wasn't really interested.
And your father was in the military too?
My father was not. My dad was the only one that wasn't. Yeah, his brothers, and then all 8 of my mom's brothers.
Wow. From World War II in Vietnam?
Yep.
Okay.
My grandpa was in World War II.
So, he was in the U.S. Army stationed in England?
Yes.
And he met your mom?
Met my grandma.
Your grandmother's.
Yeah.
And she's English?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
she immigrated to the United States?
She did. She came over on Elizabeth. And she's been here, well, she was here for, a long time.
So there's a deep tradition of military service in your family?
Yes.
Where did you, so you grew up in that same town?
I did.
What was it like? What did kids do for fun?
Oh, we played in the woods and we went four-wheeling and grew up on dirt bikes and played a lot of sports.
And did you do well in school?
I did. I was a good student.
You enjoyed it?
I did.
Were you involved in extracurricular activities?
I played volleyball, basketball, and softball, and then I took kickboxing through school, and I was in Honor Society, and Students Against Drunk Driving. I worked from when I was 11 years old. Yeah.
So do you consider yourself working class?
Working to middle class, yeah.
What did you do as a job?
as I was going through school. So when I was 11, I started cleaning senior citizens' homes. And then when I was 16, I worked in hospitality. I was a hostess at some fine dining restaurants at the Chautauqua Institution. And then I stayed through the restaurant business all through college and served my way through college and bought my first house waiting tables. Because, you know, we're all broke when we come out of grad school. So then I stayed waiting tables while I was a counselor for like 6 years.
So you went to college directly out of high school?
I did.
What did you major in?
Psychology.
Psychology. Did you have influences that guided you toward that direction?
I did, and everyone in my family is in the medical field. And they all told me I was crazy for going in the psych field. Yeah.
What drew you to psychology?
I just think it's interesting to find the other layers of individuals and thinking outside the box, and there's more than a black and white of, okay, here's a diagnosis and this is the meds. It's not like that in the mental health field. I enjoy working with people.
And where did you go to college?
I went to JCC in my hometown and I got my associates, and then I actually moved away and went to North Carolina. Came back and finished my undergrad at Hilbert, which is in Hamburg, New York, and then went to grad school at Medaille here in Amherst.
Okay, Amherst, New York?
Yep. Oh, yeah. Because you're from Amherst, Massachusetts. Yeah.
So you did a graduate degree in psychology?
My graduate degree is in mental health counseling.
Okay. So you didn't go that licensed counseling psychologist?
It's a licensure.
Licensure.
It is, yeah, but I just don't have my doctorate. Yeah.
A 2-year or 3-year program?
My grad school was a 2 year and 10 months. I did an accelerated program. So it was a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
And when did you get employed with that degree?
So I've been working with my degree since '08. I actually got hired through my internship, and that was at Goodwill Industries. So Goodwill is the agency that does all the vocational rehabilitation services for the Veterans One Stop Center. So we're actually a partner here in the building. So we put all the veterans through work readiness services trainings and increases their employability and finds all their trainings to get them ready for work once they're transitioning back from military.
Did you always want to work with veterans?
No, I did not. I never got the real interest until I was on my husband's FRG board, which is the Family Readiness Group. So as troops were deploying, we were on their weekend day, like making them breakfast and doing fundraisers and packing book bags and supplies for the guys and all their home care packages. And it was seeing the family struggle through their loved one being deployed and watching my own siblings and my niece and my nephews, watching them struggle with their dad being deployed. It was something that triggered inside me, and I love to do that. Just working, my husband was right out of the local armory here, so I was attached to his unit for about 7 years.
How did you meet your husband?
Playing softball. I played co-ed softball for the Army. For the Army, yeah, the Army National Guard was our sponsor. So I met him playing ball, and my whole family played, all my brothers and my sisters, and we all played together. So we played.
Sounds like a close family.
Yeah, we were a very close family.
They accept your husband readily?
Yes. Yeah.
And when did you guys meet, just so I can have a timeline?
We met in 2008.
So around the time that you started working with veterans?
I was just finishing, I was in my second year of grad school. Yep.
And your husband had already been in the military for a while whenever you met him?
He had been in the military since '99. But he had just moved to Buffalo in '04, which was ironic because I moved back to Buffalo in February of '04, and so did he, from Alaska.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And do you guys have children together?
We do. We have 2 children, and then he also has, I have 2 stepdaughters as well.
So you had children from a previous relationship?
He had 2 children from a previous marriage, yeah. Okay. And then we have 2 children together.
And so he was stationed close locally?
He was stationed right at the Connecticut State Armory, which is right downtown Buffalo.
Okay, so there wasn't a lot of long-distance relationship involved in it?
He did a lot of training as he ranked to get through sergeant, and he was a sergeant first class, and then he got his master sergeant right before he died.
And so you've been working with veteran communities for about 10, 11 years.
Yeah.
How long have you been involved in the vet court?
Not long, just this past year, because not until recently have Gold Star spouses or even spouses of the military been allowed to be involved if you weren't a veteran. So that's something that was just recently passed. And there are only 2 of us that are Gold Star spouses that are part of the team members.
It's really no easy way for me to ask this, but can you talk about your husband? What happened in his life that led to this death?
Sure. He grew up as a young kid from a rough home, and actually he went to school at UB on a full-ride football scholarship and ended up tearing his ACL, which led him to go into the military. He went straight to basic training with a recent knee injury, and he ended up loving it. And he was 100% soldier. There was nothing I saw that he ever loved more than being a soldier. Not the Buffalo Bills, not sports. He loved being a soldier. He was a great troop. He would not cross over to be an officer. He wanted to stay a non-commissioned officer so he could stay right with his troops. And we always had guys staying at our house that were from out of town, and if they were ever in trouble with the law, which a lot of them were, they would call him, and then we'd have individuals staying at our home. So that was definitely a big exposure. But my husband struggled with PTSD from childhood abuse, and he really struggled with anxiety and depression throughout his adult life. And he actually ended up taking his own life while his twin brother was deployed. And it was very unexpected. We had been separated for a little less than a year at the time. He had started struggling a year before that, which was the reason for our separation. His behavior was becoming toxic for my children, and that's where I had to ask him to move into his own place.
Was it an abusive relationship?
No, there was no physical abuse. It was just, verbal abuse. He was drinking. There was a lot of self-medicating he was drinking. A lot of things were surfacing of things that were never part of our life, but more issues from the past. And it was a big shock when he took his own life, because he was always against it. He just had recently lost another guy in his unit to death by suicide. And that took a huge toll. There were, in my husband's unit, three guys in his unit within a year period that had taken their own life.
Why do you think that it was such a large number in that particular unit?
I'm not sure. No one ever wants to truly die, and they're always real big, even when we were in grad school, a decade ago, of the terminology you use when discussing suicide. And, it's not, they didn't commit suicide, it's death by suicide. And there comes a time where, they hit that breaking point and they feel that not that they don't have a support system, but then it becomes not so much a pride, but that they don't want the pain anymore. They just want the pain to be gone. Yeah.
There were some underlying problems as well in your husband's case.
Yes.
I can only imagine it must have devastated you and your family. How did you respond to that?
One day at a time, trying to figure out why. He was at a good place. He had just been promoted. He loved his job. We were civil, even being separated. The kids were all doing great. That was, I think, the biggest shock to me. It was definitely unexpected at that time frame. There had never been prior suicide ideations, no thoughts of it, never. If anything, he was completely against it. I don't know. And with his brother being deployed, and it's his twin brother, so I had to Red Cross him home to even attend my husband's funeral.
Did he have to go back?
He did. He was only home for 5 days, and he had to go back.
Where was he deployed?
He was, at that time, he was in Afghanistan.
So, you already worked with veteran communities, and you did at that time. How did that impact your career? How did it impact the way you interact with other veterans?
I think that the impact that he had in our community, he was very well known. I mean, the people that attended his funeral came from all over the state. He would go to New York City. He did a lot of presentations, very involved in the community. I felt that I had to be that much better at my job, like almost take over what he did, for the local community, and making sure that I'm serving our local troops as much as he did. There's definitely times for my job that I wish I could call him, because all the acronyms that come up through the military not serving, I'm like, what does that mean? And he would always have the answer. And like, even with, the benefits stuff, thankfully, that, we have a benefits person here, but there's a lot of medical terminology, or not medical, military terminology that I'm not familiar with. I mean, you definitely get more exposed working with the veterans, but the different transferable skills that come across with the different MOSs, and now with different branches, they're all different. So that would be, great to be able to pick up the phone and call him. But I've learned a lot from him, and how to read a DD-214, and definitely helped being exposed.
Did you throw yourself into your work afterwards, do you think?
I was off for about a month after, and just making sure my kids were okay, trying to get them, not that they were okay in a month, but I had family. My mom stayed home with my kids so I could get back to my clients too. And my job definitely helps, because although we were in a really tough time in our life, you always know someone else's life is different. And it made me that much more motivated to get out of bed every day, that my kids needed me, and to know that although, this was a devastation, we have to power through, and that he would want us to be happy and to continue doing what we love.
Do you think that helping other veterans helps you process your own grief?
I do. I definitely see a lot of different struggles on all different levels, and especially with Veterans Court, they typically assign me to veterans who are grieving. I always think, like, does it trigger me more? Not so much. I think maybe my education background has definitely helped me a lot through grief and understanding grief and the power of grief. And I have a whole different new respect for grief now, and watching someone, because I never really knew. I've lost grandparents and, friends in high school and stuff, but no one that significant to me. But to watch my children grieve, and watching a child grieve, is at a totally different level. And I just have a whole new respect for, individuals. You see a lot of the soldiers losing their buddies, and you don't really understand grief until you really feel it.
How old are your children?
They're now 8 and 9. My daughter will be 10 at the end of August.
So, to segue a little bit, how did you first become involved in the veteran court?
I was interested a couple years ago, and I took this promotion 3 years ago with being the program manager for our veterans office. And I wasn't allowed to be a part of Veterans Court because I wasn't a veteran. I could just go be a service provider and sit in the courtroom, and I'm like, this is amazing. And even with my background in mental health, I always felt that I struggled to understand substance abuse and had the empathy for it. And I even remember stating this to my professors in grad school. Like, am I going to be okay in this field? Because I lack that empathy for individuals with a substance abuse, because I always felt initially it was a choice to start. However, now working with veterans and seeing them struggle and self-medicate, and that a lot of them are using heroin because they can't get their painkillers or it's not enough anymore, and for different reasons. So understanding that someone always has a story. There's always a story behind somebody, not just judge the fact that they're using drugs, and that it is an addiction, it's an illness, and it affects their families way more than it's affecting them presently. But it gave me a whole new look and a whole new respect on substance abuse, and it's such a powerful experience being in Veterans Court. I think I could go through every emotion. You get to see a graduate ceremony yesterday, which is neat, and they pass the coins, and I've really thought about donating my husband's coins to the court, which I don't know where their coins come from, but he has books full. But I don't know if it's something that my son would want to give up. I have donated a lot of his stuff to like the local Army surplus stuff. I mean, he was a big guy, so to find a 13.5 boot isn't very likely. You need a lot of stuff. So, a lot of the guys, when they're transitioning, they don't have a lot of money. They go into the military field to travel the world, and they get comfortable living on a base and on post, and stuff's a lot cheaper, and it's like a reality check when they come home. And that's why I feel a lot of them struggle, because they're making this money, they're buying these expensive cars that they really can't afford, or wanting to supply a beautiful life for their families and maintain it. And that's where a lot of them struggle to find that job that's going to compete with the salaries that they were making in the military, especially when they're at officer level or higher NCOs.
So you've been involved with the court a lot longer than you've officially been a mentor, right?
I was a service provider there for our same office.
What types of services did you provide?
So Goodwill offers all vocational services. So we work with Access VR. We partner directly with Access VR, if you're not familiar, is our state vocational rehabilitation agency. So any individual that has a disability on their medical record qualifies. There are programs at our headquarters. We offer like a 60-day work program. There's anywhere from a 15-day, 30-day, 60-day. So we do direct hands-on work training in various different departments in our organization, from teaching them to run a forklift, OSHA 10 training. They can work in our warehouse, they can be on the dock, they can get their CDL, partnering with the NFTA and other companies in the community. We also do a retail sales, customer service. We'll place them out in the community, and they can do a community work site, but they have case managers and a full support system that allows them to transition and work through the whole process from military to civilian. Because a lot of these individuals now, we have 38-year-olds, who are retiring out of the military. They only know the military. And even if they are officers, a lot of them haven't made their own resumes, and that's the barrier. They know everything else, and they could present in front of 1,000 people flawlessly. The professionalism's there, the work ethic's there, the drive. They just need a resume. So that's where we come and play. But we build other resumes, and if they need interviewing skills just to touch up, but a lot of our military folks are very professional, and they're used to boarding for their different rankings, and I feel that it's easier to get them through the interview process as opposed to our state clients.
Interesting. So you work with both?
I work with both. Only in this office do I work with veterans. Our headquarter offices, I work with all individuals with various different disabilities.
And it seems like common sense, but I just wonder if you can talk about how having those skills and access to those resources enables veterans to rehabilitate, to recover.
Sure. I feel that, with any field that you're in, if you get to work through the process and the stepping stones through our agency. So I was an intern there. I did my pre-practicum placement when I was in grad school. So I got to start off as an entry-level case manager and got familiar with all the referral sources in the community, building that networking base, coming familiar and shadowing the social workers and the CRCs, your rehabilitation counselors, and our psychologists, and just, watching it in action, I learn way more than I ever do sitting in a classroom, seeing it hands-on. So then I got familiar with what was offered, and then we do, especially at Veterans Court, you meet all the military organizations and what they offer and the services that they offer. We do a lot of job fairs, and networking is huge. Just having your resources is what's going to be the key to them transitioning successfully, and just keeping that support system and communication. They need the structure. I feel that's the number one reason that veterans really struggle, is what I've noticed. It's, a lot of people will say it's pride, or they don't know what to do. It's the loss of structure or purpose. Every day for how many ever years, 6 o'clock, it's time to get up, it's PT. They were told what to do. They didn't necessarily have to think on their own. Not underestimating their education, because a lot of our veterans, went through school and have, awesome degrees coming out and are very well educated. Some of our older veterans will struggle with technology, and that's one of the things we've offered here is computer trainings, and we partner with the Buffalo Employment Training Center to get all the computer trainings into to get them up to par for like our Vietnam veterans.
It's a valuable service.
Yeah.
You have a background in psychology, but I always ask this question, but I think you'll have the special expertise to answer it. Do you think that there's a relationship between trauma and incarceration?
Absolutely. I feel I don't know too many of our veterans. Like currently right now, we have about 81 actively seeking veterans, and 11 of them have a legal history, have either been incarcerated or struggle. That's what the barrier is right now for their employment. And all 11 of them have induced trauma or been exposed to trauma at one point or another, whether military or they were involved in a really bad car accident, or just their disability and being able to transition into a whole new role. If it was a physical injury, everything they've always known, they no longer can do. So being able to get them to accept the new them, and the new skills that they have, use the education piece that they knew from their prior roles and transition it over, it seems to be a lot more successful than if, they want to stick to what they know.
So you're working with veterans outside of the court, but who were previously incarcerated, now they're seeking employment?
Yes, so we don't typically work with anyone right now outside of Veterans Court, because the individuals who are incarcerated, whether they broke a program requirement that they ended up incarcerated. The individuals that are going through Veterans Treatment Court are in the program. So it's like a probationary time. So a lot of them are working. If they're not working, that's where we get involved, make sure that they're working. We make sure that they're maintaining all their medical appointments, their counseling appointments. They have a support system. They're attending groups, just making sure that they don't relapse, that they have that person they can call no matter what time of day it is, if they're struggling.
Is there something unique or special about Veteran Treatment Court that leads to such great success with the recidivism rate that you think?
I think it's such a unique, I honestly didn't know it existed until last year. And I think that every city needs a Veterans Treatment Court, not to give them special treatment, but it's a different understanding as to what they've been through. I mean, here's a soldier coming home that's so excited to be home. What's the first thing he does? Goes out and parties with his buddies. Then he drives home. A lot of them are getting DWIs or they're self-medicating. A lot of drug use. Typically it's heroin. It's not that they're, just smoking weed due to pain, that they're not getting their medication, whether it's a delay in benefit coverage as they're transitioning from active duty to civilian, and getting the VA benefits across the line transitioned over, which I feel now, I mean, even being in this position for the last 3 years, the VA has really taken charge of that. I don't see such a delay in the benefits, and people are more actively approaching it as they're transitioning out. Some military bases are offering like trades skills in welding or electricians to allow them to transition easier back to their home town or their communities and what's offered there. They're actually actively seeking out what's available in their town, which I think is wonderful. In which I've been trying to find out what the bases are and why everyone's not doing it. Because I feel that that should be something that's part of their discharge.
Have there been lessons along the way that you've learned in your working with veterans in the court?
Definitely a higher understanding for substance abuse and empathy was huge for me. I mean, as a professional, as a person, I definitely empathize for it at a whole different level than I ever did. And I feel that I work with my clients better that do struggle with the substance abuse, whether they're veterans or non-veterans, just a new understanding, and I think a stronger push for the resources to get them their help and to understand how they can really elapse so easy. I mean, I personally have never, been in drug use or anything like that, so I personally can't state their struggle that they go through, but to visibly see it in veterans court and watch this strong man crumble at the podium in front of the judge is a really powerful experience. And then to watch women too just sit there and they're losing their children because they can't beat their addiction, it's heartbreaking. And do they really want to relapse? Absolutely not.
Do you think that there's something that could be learned from veteran court and applied to the criminal justice system at large?
I think that, depending on what the offense is, maybe everyone should be given the option to, not a second chance, but maybe to rehabilitate versus being sent away to prison. Let's put them in work training programs and place them somewhere where they're doing hands-on work and they're getting a trade instead of be sitting in a cell and just wasting taxpayers' money. Because then they come out and some can't transition back out because now they're finding their own home, or they were used to 3 meals and then they want to go back in because they don't know how to survive.
Have you been a part of any success stories from the court that you care to talk about?
I've only seen a few with the graduates, and typically they're assigned to the same mentors, and because I'm a Gold Star spouse, I'm not allowed to mentor a veteran on my own. Not in that setting. We can't take our professional roles into the courtroom. It's completely different. And that was one of the things they really emphasized, you're not counseling here, so you kind of, we can't bring our professional role into that courtroom. We are there only, not even as a battle buddy, just to make sure that they know what resources are available to them and that they have all their ducks in a row. Are you going to counseling? Do you have a support system? Well, who are you going to call in case you need this? When's your next medical appointment? What do you do for hobbies? It's just kind of being real with them. Anything they say to us, is held confidential, but we don't put anything in there that's going to incriminate them either because, those records could possibly be pulled, I'm sure.
Can that be a little frustrating at times that you have this expertise and it's not being used?
It's different for me. It's almost like I have to create my own barrier and make sure that I don't cross over that line because I want to be well, this is available. Well, are you going to counseling? Well, you could be doing this. Or what kind of techniques are they showing you to handle your stress? So it is a fine line for sure. I feel that there's times where I'm biting my tongue, but more so the resources are there, and that comes from a big case management background. So I feel that it's definitely a positive asset to have, the background I have to be there.
So whenever you're working with veterans who are experiencing grief, are you drawing from your personal experiences as well as your professional in your interactions with them?
So I think I definitely I can relate more to their pain and direct. Your everyday routine is interrupted. Not that it doesn't hurt losing a friend or a grandparent, but they're not typically in your home and your everyday routine. So for somebody that, was their soldier right next to them, that was like not their spouse, but that's their battle buddy, that was their routine. And then to have to go on and do your job when that person's no longer there, I can empathize for that. Not in a battlefield, but in real life. I mean, this is my civilian battle. It's me and my kids now. So, I mean, you definitely build a support system around them. If you have a support system, you can overcome anything, and any resources to get through, which is wonderful about, Buffalo and Erie County. There's a lot of support system here for veterans, with the Veterans One-Stop Center, and then the Veterans Treatment Court, and the Vet Center, which I think you met a representative there yesterday. I mean, they do wonderful things, which actually, the Vet Center, although we weren't veterans, we were family members, they took my children and I first, because with our military insurance, there was a 4.5-month wait to get into counseling, because there's so less grief counselors for children, adolescent grief counselors that deal with trauma, that will accept military insurance.
So you went to the vet center?
So I initially was at the Vet Center, and we commuted far, because we used to live in the South Towns, which was like almost 50 minutes each way. And then once we got transitioned and the referrals went through for our military insurance, then we transferred somewhere closer. But there's definitely tons of resources in the community.
It seems like veterans in this area are very fortunate, because Buffalo has started a new model for reform.
They did.
And hopefully it spreads and continues.
I think there's 13 now throughout the U.S. There's 13 veterans courts.
There's it's over 400.
Oh, it is? Oh, I'm way off. Maybe that's in New York State.
It's probably 13.
Delete that one.
Yeah. No, that's okay. So I guess I just have a couple more questions.
Sure.
If there were something you would want the public to understand about the challenges that military personnel or veterans face, what would that be?
I think that they should give every veteran an equal opportunity, in the sense that don't judge them to think that every veteran has issues or that they can't function in society even if they've been in combat. I think this goes hand in hand with a veteran, if they had that parenting and support system, as opposed to a veteran who was maybe fleeing his childhood, didn't have direct parenting or coping skills. It all comes down to coping skills with these veterans coming home, and the ones that's going to utilize the resources that are available to them. I'm sorry, what was your original question?
I'll ask it a slightly different way.
Sure.
What advice would you give to military personnel or veterans who might be in a dark place?
So I think it's, with the veterans, in the commanding officers, definitely take that time to get to know your platoon sergeants, and making sure that they're in touch with all the members of that platoon and knowing what's going outside. Just get to know them when they're doing these drills and trainings, and I think that's the most important. When you can be real with somebody and they feel that with you and can build a rapport, they're going to open up to you, versus having to play the tough guy role or tough girl role throughout, that military position.
Do you think that there are cultural changes that need to happen within the military to deal with PTSD and suicide and other mental health problems?
Well, I think it's important for every professional to not fall in that gap that, everyone's trying to claim PTSD, or, this person's not going to commit suicide because they talk about it. It's because, people will say that if they don't talk about it, they won't do it. That's not true. They don't ever want to do it, but pay attention to the signs and symptoms of suicide and depression, and every commanding officer, that should be training that's put in play. Suicide awareness for sure, which I think they're definitely pushing in New York State and all over the country. Our staff alone too, and get trauma-informed trainings. We do that with our staff across Goodwill. We have the local UB grad students will come in and teach our trainings, and the more education you have, the more power you have, the more you can help others.
What type of advice would you give to other Gold Star spouses? Is there something that can be learned from your experience?
As a Gold Star spouse, I haven't really utilized the resources that are there for the Gold Star families. There's a lot of trips that you can take as a group setting, and kids that have lost their parents, and that they can get partnered up with other soldiers and stuff like that. I feel it's one of those things that at one point I want to make time for it with my kids in sports and stuff. I don't want to pull them away from something they love to then not re-traumatize them, but you know what I mean, to do that, I'm not sure. So there's definitely a lot of resources for Gold Star spouses out there, and Fort Drum is wonderful. I mean, they still touch base with us monthly, and it's been 2 years. I mean, we still get cards from our house from all the TAPs. So, I mean, the military organizations are really good. I think it's important in the military organizations for when you have people in important roles that are waiting on paperwork. If they decide to leave that position or transition to another, that there's somebody there to be picking up, because these paperwork are such time sensitive. That's a huge thing with the military. You always hear, you're on military time, it's rush, 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 but then you're in standstill, So, take everyone's paperwork that sits on your desk. I approach my day every day that this would be my family member. I'd want somebody to take care of my kid like I would, or my brother or my sister or my grandparents. Treat everyone like they're your family. And I think that, take heart in what you do. If you don't have passion in what you do, then it's time to move on to a different career.
Sure. Is there anything throughout this interview that you wanted to talk about that I haven't thought to ask?
What did you say was the reason that really drove you to want to interview for incarcerated veterans?
Well, it's a long process. I think that I started interviewing veterans around 8 or 9 years ago. I was an undergrad, and I've always been interested in the impact of war on society and how war impacts people's survivors' lives. So people who come home from war and how they're changed or impacted by that experience. I interviewed a World War II Marine veteran. That was the first interview I ever did. I was kind of hooked.
Wow.
And I started getting interested in Vietnam and reintegration. What was like coming home, especially from that war. And then I just kept coming across research gaps with especially African American veterans who came home oftentimes with disabilities, but because of discrimination were denied access to disability services, and PTSD as well. And a lot of these guys didn't have jobs. Unemployment rates were really high in the 70s, and it led to incarceration, and no one was really writing about that topic, and still no one's really written about it yet. So I've been trying to fix that for the past 3 or 4 years. There's not really a short answer to that.
I just got the first chapter.
That's the process. So,
right.
And then that led me to the veteran treatment courts, because that's, I think, a very significant chapter in the history of incarcerated veterans, because people who came home from Vietnam didn't have nearly the resources that people from the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan had. And so I'm interested in that too.
How many veterans courts have you visited?
4. This is the 4th one. I'll go to Baltimore next month as well. That'll be the 5th.
Have you been to another one in New York State?
No, just there's one in Holyoke, Massachusetts, which is really local for me. Warwick, Rhode Island, Philadelphia was the biggest one, and then Buffalo.
Okay. Yeah. Because there's one right in Batavia.
I didn't know that.
So you're only like an hour from there. There would be another one that you could visit.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'll look it up and just try to get more involved. Initially, veteran court was a way to get access because a lot of the veterans, especially people who've been incarcerated, they're invisible, especially if they're Vietnam generation. They've been in there so long that it's really difficult to get access to them.
Yeah. That was a really smart approach for you. That was brilliant. Very good. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's frustrating sometimes because there's so much red tape. The prison system does not want people researching.
That's right.
Them.
You got it.
But the court system, I think, is a very positive aspect about this, and the most fascinating and perhaps surprising thing about the whole story that I've been trying to tell is veterans helping other veterans. There's just something unique about people who have been essentially trying to invest in the recovery of other people and how that helps them in their own struggles. As I suspect you may be happening with you as well, that you're able to.
Well, and I think that's what's so important. Like here for the Veterans One Stop Center, they're going to develop a brand new peer support group, which I think is wonderful. I just had a veteran come through who just got his peer support certification. But I don't ever want education to be a barrier for individuals who can help others. It's the experience that is going to draw others to open up to them, as opposed to me sitting there facilitating a group that I haven't been in that experience. I haven't been in their shoes, as opposed of having a combat veteran who's went through everything they've went through is going to be way more effective than anything I could ever facilitate. So that's been a big push. Self-advocacy, advocating for yourselves, and taking that first step and following through. Follow through with our veteran population has been a struggle, just because it's the loss of structure. I feel is another, besides transportation, as another number one barrier is that loss of structure.
And I think that most people face those challenges. It's not just veterans.
Absolutely.
If we're talking about criminal justice reform, then it needs to be holistic. It needs to have, I think, a counseling proponent built into it, because I think most people are dealing with trauma in some ways. I think if they grew up in poverty, especially urban poverty, their lives were traumatic inherently through violence, through drug abuse, through alcoholism, domestic violence.
Absolutely.
So I think that veteran court, what Judge Russell started, is something profound. I think it could be applied to reform and address mass incarceration.
Yes.
That's where this is coming from in many ways, because we're all impacted by both war and in mass incarceration. I mean, most people in this, they've lived a very isolated life, have been impacted by those ways, even if it's not readily obvious to them.
Absolutely.
I also think that if people can understand that even veterans who are oftentimes idealized as being pillars of strength, if they're vulnerable to the criminal justice system, then everyone is.
Yes.
Sorry, we kind of turned the roles in this interview.
Yeah.
You have other questions for me?
I don't.
Is there anything else in your experience that you think could be helpful to this project and understanding?
I would just continue to keep visiting Veterans Court. I think that's great that you're doing that and seeing the different stories that come in play and their different struggles through.
I just have one more question.
Sure.
When history is written, what do you want it to say about you?
Never give up on your dreams, and never give anything power it doesn't deserve.
Never give anything that power doesn't deserve?
Don't ever give anything power that it doesn't deserve.
Oh, power that doesn't deserve. I like that. It's unique. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, Mrs. Higgins, I want to thank you for your service that you provide in your community. I especially want to thank you for sharing your story with me. I understand that it can be difficult, and I carry that responsibility very seriously, and I'm very deeply grateful for that.
Thank you for taking the time to come to Buffalo and everything you're doing to make more communities aware of the impact that incarceration and trauma does have on everyone as a whole, because it's not just the veteran population. And I wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.